It was day 9. It was 0500, and Greg, Pastor, Richie, Steve, and myself were up and eating the breakfast Linda and Lee and Cheryl had prepared for us. I almost wanted to say, "Oh no, oatmeal again," but thought better of it. It was warm, and we were blessed to have it. I couldn't lose sight of the fact that so many were far worse off than we were. Aaron was finishing up in the tower and getting ready to come down and eat also as the sun came up. We decided that we should continue to sweep through the surrounding homes and evaluate who and what was left in the area. Were there people struggling to survive near us? Could we secure supplies from abandoned houses and businesses? One house we were at the other day was empty. When do we decide that it's okay to take supplies? Are the owners struggling to get back home? If so, it could be devastating for them to make it back and find their homes empty of all the supplies. On the other hand, they may never return, and all those supplies would be wasted, or marauders could find them and take them. These moral dilemmas had to be reconciled. In any case, we were all in agreement that we should continue to search and evaluate the area. We had 6 men in our group, and a lot going on at the church. We decided to patrol in a 4-man group, leaving 2 men to pull security in camp. It was tentatively decided, for now at least, we would leave Aaron at the church in charge of security. He had a young wife and an 11-month-old baby, and another on the way. We were all older and decided among ourselves that his young family could not survive without him. Of course, we would be there to help support them if anything happened to him, but it would not be the same. 2 very young children needed their father, and that was all there was to that. Then there was Pastor. He was the spiritual leader of our group and of the church. And with 3 grandchildren to look after, now he would remain with Aaron to pull camp security as well. Every one of us had loved ones that were not with us. This weighed heavy on our hearts and was a constant cloud of concern in the air. We trusted that God was with them, that he would not forsake them. At the same time, we couldn't help worrying about them a little. Where they were, if they were okay. Did they have food and water? Were they even alive? Linda had 2 daughters out there somewhere. One was in Tennessee and the other was in Southern California. She had a son in the Marine Corps, moved around a lot with his unit. And I had a son who was a chef and owned his own restaurant with 2 of his friends up in Boston. I would find Linda sometimes staring into the fire or off into the sky, quiet and saddened. I knew her heart was heavy for them, her daughters especially. It was different with her son. He had been in the Corps for 5 years now, and she had grown accustomed to being constantly concerned for his safety and well-being, and not always knowing where he was. But he was well-trained, well-armed, and part of one of the most elite fighting mechanisms in the world. She didn't speak too much about her concerns for her daughters. I think she just didn't want to put anything more on my plate right now. My son was independent. He had been on his own from a young age and accustomed to fending for himself. He was smart and resourceful, but still, I thought about him every day. I know that Linda rests in the comfort of knowing that whatever happens to them would be part of God's will. Greg, Richie, Steve, and myself loaded our weapons, put on our empty backpacks, and headed toward the field and back that leads to the power line trail. When we got to the road, we walked into the woods parallel to it and spread out 100 feet apart. After what happened in the road with Jerry the other day, this was now our standard formation. After a short time, we came to the home of the farmer who had helped us with the gang that killed Jerry. We walked up on the side of his driveway and knocked on the door to check on our new friends. We found them well, and they reported hearing shots sporadically over the last few days, but not seeing anyone on their farm. They assured us that they had plenty of food and water, and when we went to leave, promising to return periodically to check on them. We also confirmed again that they were always welcome to join us at the church if the need arose. They thanked us and gave us a dozen eggs and a half a gallon of fresh raw milk as we said our goodbyes. He cautioned us with that without any form of refrigeration we would need to consume the milk right away. Down along the driveway, we went back to the woods by the road. The next place we came to looked abandoned. We cautiously approached, and Steve and Greg went around both sides and in through the rear, as Richie and I covered them from the tree line in the front yard. After they cleared the house and called us in, it was obvious that someone had been there and ransacked the place. There wasn't much left there of any use to us except an axe in the barn and a few miscellaneous items in the house. As we were getting ready to leave, Steve heard noises in the attic. He motioned down the line to each of us, and Greg, who was closest to the stairs, pulled the door down open with his shotgun leveled and started up the stairs. Richie followed, with Steve and I in close succession. In the attic, in a small room on one end, we found a young couple hiding. They were unarmed and scared. They pleaded with us not to kill them. We assured them we meant them no harm. They had been out shopping when the EMP went off and had struggled for 3 days to get back home. 2 days after returning home, they were visited by a group of 3 men who beat the man and beat and raped his wife. They were traumatized and in shock and just cowered in the corner, shaking uncontrollably and repeating over and over their plea for us not to kill them. We talked about what to do with them and agreed we would take them back to the church with us. It was early and we wanted to check out a couple more places before returning, so we decided to bring them to the farmer's place and see if they could stay with them until we passed by and retrieved them on our way back to camp. When we arrived back at the farmer's, his wife ran out and embraced the young woman. We brought them inside. They had known them and were friends, having lived so close by. They told us that they had plenty of room and that they could stay there indefinitely. They would care for them and see to their recovery. Farmer said he would welcome the company and the help around the farm when they got stronger. He also said he would welcome the extra hand with security. He assured us that he had plenty of food and supplies for the 4 of them. We continued out on our patrol. As we approached the road leading up to the middle school, Greg said he wanted to get up there and get a look at who was there and assess their strengths and weaknesses. I was concerned, and this was the same group Greg had wanted to exact his revenge on, and I suggested just slipping by, trying not to let them notice us. Steve and Richie thought getting an assessment of them was a good idea. Of course, neither one of them knew anything of Greg's abandoned plan for revenge. We skirted around the ball field and into the woods, at the base of the hill behind the school, leading up to the maintenance entrance. Greg went up the hill first, with us following in formation. At the top, we took position behind 3 dumpsters that were lined up outside the kitchen. No sign of anyone, but there were old military jeeps lined up in the rear lot. We knew these security force officers would kill us on sight without hesitation, as they had shot at us on the road that day without warning. I slowly approached first at the back of the building around a fence that enclosed a chilling tower. Richie followed 50 feet behind me. Greg and Steve remained behind the cover of the dumpster. Greg walked to us to hold fast as another jeep with 4 soldiers was approaching from the side. Richie and I took cover behind the cooling tower and waited for the all clear from Greg that they had gone into the building. After we used a pair of wire cutters to get inside the chiller fence, we had access to a ladder bolted to the side of the building that led up to the roof over the main corridor. Once up top, we were able to make our way to an exhaust hood that was mounted on the gym roof. We easily undid 2 wing nut bolts that held it down and hinged it back and out of the way. Now, inside the unit, where it could easily be accessed for service, we were able to reach down and open the louver slightly, allowing us to see into the gym. There were bunk beds, 3 high, lined up in rows on the floor. There had to be 300 people in the gym, men, women, and children alike. They were packed in like sardines. At each door there was an armed guard, as well as several others walking the aisles. Apparently, the emergency management officials were using this facility to house refugees. Or were they prisoners? We quietly and slowly backed down the way we had come, met back up with Greg and Steve behind the dumpsters and filled them in on what we saw. It was a little disconcerting knowing that we were only a mile away from this, but the church was hidden in the woods away from any traffic. Still, it seemed eventually they would stumble upon us. We made our way back to church and briefed Pastor and Aaron on what we had seen. We enjoyed the venison roast with rehydrated veggies for dinner, and thanks to our friends, the farmers, we had fresh eggs for breakfast tomorrow. We talked about this FEMA facility at the middle school, and we were all concerned. We decided it would be best to formulate an emergency bug-out plan for when and if the need arose to evacuate quickly. I took first watch in the tower. Linda sat with me after the others had all gone to bed. We looked at the beautiful sky, reflected on the wonder that God created for us. How did this world get to this point? For decades, this nation has been turning away from God. Basic morality was fast becoming a thing of the past. Society first tolerated, then allowed, and finally embraced the things that did not please God. This nation turned their backs on God, and He withholds His blessings on us because of that. The Bible tells us that blessed is the nation whose Lord is God. There was a time when this nation exalted God as our Lord, and He did bless us as a result of that. It's not too late to return to Him. It's not too late for revival. This nation can be healed. With God, all things are possible. Will it happen? We don't know the answer to that question. Individually, for us and the people here, we are going to do our best to honor God with all that we do. The Bible tells us in 2 Chronicles, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sins, and will heal their land. There are conditions to that promise from God. We had to do our part first. We trusted that if we did, God would keep His promise, and hear our prayers and forgive us our wicked ways. He would, once again, put His blessings on this nation and heal our land. As for me and my house, I will serve the Lord. The rest is not now, nor has it ever been within my control. As we looked up into the heavens, which declare the glory of God, we prayed and thanked God for the peace and the comfort that we received from His Word. We thanked Him that, even in these difficult times of uncertainty, we rest in the knowledge of who God is. Linda fell asleep in my arms. When it was time to wake Steve to take his turn in the tower, I let him sleep. I sat all night in that tower with Linda asleep at my side. I looked down into the valley and the town miles away and watched it burn. I had peace in my heart knowing that God was with us. Thanks for watching.